Ladies and gentlemen, please find your seats. The program will begin momentarily. Please welcome to the stage your host for this evening, Michael Tate.
Hello, good evening. I know we can do better than that, JFCS East Bay and beautiful Temple Isaiah. Let's give ourselves a warm round of applause. There we go. It is so good to be back together. And before we go any further, let's give a round of applause for the Matthew Stein duo with that spirited music getting us started on our evening. Thank you so much. It is my great pleasure to be back here. This is our 15th annual Art of Living. As they said, my name is Michael Tate, and I could not be happier to be here. It's been 3 long years. Can you believe that? 3 years. So, as we get settled in this evening, we have a lot of fun. I invite you to silence, but not turn off your cell phone, because you're going to need that a little bit later, but invite you to silence that. I was thinking about just when the last time we were here in 2019, gathered in this absolutely beautiful sanctuary. It was a lovely day, just like today, but for those of you who were here, and how many of you just by applause were here in 2019 for the Art of... Yes. You may recall when we gathered in 2019, we were dealing with East Bay fire. So there's something in the air, but we have made it, and we are here, and we're going to have a wonderful evening today. Now, yes, there we go. So now, of course, things are a little bit different. You all are seating sort of a row apart, and we have a wonderful group of you here in this beautiful temple. And we also have an equally enthusiastic group of people who are watching us via live stream from their homes or hotels, wherever they might be. So hello, everyone watching out there. We're delighted that you are joining us as well. So it is certainly, I know, our collective hope that next year we can return to our traditional Art of Living celebration. And I remember the wonderful food we had, the drinking, the schmoozing, we were thrilled to be together and to spend that time. And as my dear friend Leslie tells me, when I've gone to her home for Passover for the last 25 years, and at one point I was the youngest person, so I got to do the reading. I have now aged out, but as she has shared with me, no matter what the circumstances are, when the whole mishpacha gathers, the family is there, and we are in community. Was that pretty good? Did I say that pretty well? I heard, yes, I heard gasps for people who were, they're like, who taught him? Yes. Anyway, now, we all know on a serious note that the work of JFCS East Bay has not stopped as it serves individuals whose critical needs continued during the pandemic. In fact, their needs actually became even more acute. The world is in incredible need of repair right now. As we know, there is so much unrest and disruption, and we're in need of healing. And in its own way, the services of JFCS East Bay continues to meet those needs at a scale. Now, the urgency is upon us to step up and to really lean in tonight. So I hope that that's what you all have come to do, as well as have a good time. Now, tonight you'll have the opportunity to hear from JFCS East Bay's leadership team as they share about the incredible impact that the organization is having even during these challenging times. So whether you're here in person or watching the live stream, each of you will have the opportunity to support some of the amazing work happening and to help JFCS East Bay meet the most critical needs of the community. Now, you'll also have an opportunity to be treated to something that you might not hear in any other synagogue, featuring New York Times best-selling author Adam Mansbach, whose most famous book, yes, his most famous book title, and I know where we are. I can't quite say the full title, but mind you, anyone who has ever tried to put a fussy child to bed knows exactly what I'm talking about. Now, let's get our program started. So I invite you to join me in your enthusiastic welcoming of Paul Raskin, President of the JFCS East Board. Paul.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to our annual Art of Living event celebrating Jewish Family and Community Services East Bay's accomplishments. It's my pleasure to thank you all for attending and being a part of this wonderful community. This year we are together in hybrid. Next year, may we all be together in person. Like all of you, it's been an unusual couple of years for JFCS East Bay. We've been challenged in so many unexpected ways. With 145 years of experience delivering social services in Alameda and Contra Costa counties, we are empowered by an incredible community of people like you here tonight. We see the impacts of racial trauma in our own local communities and throughout the United States. The health and economic inequities made so much worse by the pandemic, the suffering worldwide due to conflicts, war, climate change, including the displacement of people on a historic scale. Only last year, our community sprang into action to aid those fleeing the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. Over the past year, JFCS East Bay has resettled over 500 refugees from Afghanistan, Myanmar, Guatemala, Iran, Kenya, and Sudan. We have a high-performing team and are ready to aid Ukrainian refugees arriving in the East Bay. Wherever refugees come from, whether they are fleeing war, persecution, or poverty, leaving one's home, as in the story of Exodus that many of us read about last week at our Passover Seders, is woven into the culture of JFCS in our community culture and lived experiences. Seeing the resurgence in anti-Semitism and racism in the world, we are dedicated to serving all people in need to living healthier, fuller lives. We continue to serve Holocaust survivors and others with our Jewish safety net efforts and many other programs you'll hear about tonight through our wonderful staff of more than 70 dedicated individuals and hundreds of volunteers. Beyond this work that is historically rooted in the Jewish experience, today JFCS is an inclusive organization collaborating with our partners to serve the entire East Bay, including the Unity Council in Oakland's Fruitvale District for early childhood and mental health services, the Noor Islamic and Cultural Community Center in Concord supporting newly arrived Afghani families, and Monument Impact, supporting immigration legal services throughout Contra Costa County. As an organization, we centered this broad focus on community service into a new strategic vision and plan this year. Current and past board members, along with agency leadership and community members, have spent numerous hours behind the scenes working on this new strategic framework that our agency will need to direct its energies going forward. We're excited tonight to share some of the details with you later in this program. Before doing so, I want to recognize the outstanding work of both our current board members as well as all past board members who are here tonight. Would all you board members please stand up now and be recognized, even including those of you, thank you, even including those of you who are working remotely. Please stand at your homes. Your work in various board meetings, committees, task forces, and even more, your dedication and generosity is so greatly appreciated, helping JFCS improve and expand. Thank you to all of you so very much. Next, I want to recognize the entire staff who not only made this event possible today, but more importantly, ensure that we deliver quality services every day to our clients. Would all of our JFCS East Bay employees also please stand up and be recognized? Thank you all. Finally, there is one other group of people that need to be recognized. That's our network of volunteers, many hundreds of you. Would those of you who have ever volunteered in some way for JFCS also please stand up? You go grocery shopping for those who are not able. You deliver Shabbat and holiday meals. You work with our Holocaust survivors and other seniors, children. You help in the office. You've packaged and unpackaged gifts and so many other vital tasks to keep our organization and our services moving smoothly. Thank you all for investing your time and resources together, creating a strong, purposeful community to help so many others live better lives. Last year was a new chapter for JFCS East Bay. At the end of 2020, Avi Rose retired after serving as our leader for over 15 years. Avi led the expansion of the organization with many innovative programs addressing emergent needs in our community. Avi, wherever you are, somewhere in Europe, we've heard, or Asia, we certainly have not forgotten you, and we thank you for all your numerous accomplishments in preparation, and all your accomplishments, period. In preparation for Avi's retirement, a search committee looked high and low across the United States, and we ended up selecting an incredibly talented leader who is living just down the street here in Berkeley and knows our community very well. It's been a little over a year now, no doubt a challenging one in many ways we could not have anticipated. But I want to assure you that our new leader, Robin Mencher, has demonstrated, is fully engaged and is taking the organization full speed ahead with our new strategic vision into our next chapter. For many of you here today, this may be the first time you're meeting Robin in person. Please join me in welcoming our Chief Executive Officer, Robin Mencher.
Thank you, Paul, so much. It feels so great to be here together tonight in person, with so many of us joining together from home as well, and really pulling together as one community. As I look out and I see all of those masks, I also see those smiles in your eyes, and know that we're doing our best to be here together and to come together in community. I really want to thank you all for the incredibly warm welcome and support received from so many of you over the last few months as I've stepped into this new role. And it's a delight for some of us to be moving from the screens to the in real life experiences of seeing one another this evening, and look forward to many more of those opportunities. Let's take a minute before we go any further and do a big shout out to our friends here at Temple Isaiah for hosting us this evening in this beautiful sanctuary with the gorgeous afternoon and the beautiful light. After all we've been through, moments of coming together like this are even that much more special. And really, providing sanctuary is a value that we all share, and we are grateful to be together as a community in this moment. Well, as many of us have said goodbye to Passover for another year and packed up our dishes, I was really struck this year, after all that I've witnessed with JFCS East Bay's programs this past year, I was really struck by how the story of liberation for the Jewish people really connects to the universal human experience that we've seen with people from all over the world coming here to the East Bay. That experience of moving from a narrow place, a constrained place in our lives, to wider, open places that allow us freedom to make choices and to exercise the agency in our own lives. In many ways at this time, we're all emerging into a wider world now, and we can feel the uncertainty and the turbulence. We feel all the new decisions we need to make, the fits, the starts, the new challenges, and the risks that are involved, right? It's this story, though, of the agency and choice in moments like this that I have seen time and again as we work to partner with our clients. So, as Paul shared with you, the board of directors, along with our staff from across the agency and stakeholders from throughout the community, both counties, lots of different voices coming together, we have worked together over the last few months to build a new strategic plan for JFCS East Bay. And this one is built on the power of the legacy of the last 145 years of this organization. So building on those strengths, and in these moments of change, we're focusing on what's coming next, what's in the future of our community, and what are the needs that we need to prepare to meet. As we feel in our own lives and we see the headlines, The world is changing, and it's changing in huge ways, and that change is coming faster and faster. We took on the task of trying to figure out how can we be ready for what is next. So this summer, we'll be unveiling our full strategic plan, but I have the chance right this evening to share with you just a little preview of where we're headed. For the very first time tonight, we're going to share out our new vision statement. It is short, simple, by design, and here goes. A community where everyone can flourish with dignity. We are strengthening our East Bay community through investing in individuals and families. We're together building capacity, supporting people as they move from those narrow spaces to wide open spaces. Think about those words. A community where everyone can flourish with dignity. They reflect our deeply held values. Building sanctuary, creating a culture of belonging and inclusion, a commitment that we all share, a commitment to repairing the world, starting right here at home in the East Bay, supporting all communities, families, and individuals, the Jewish community and the wider community. We're uplifting the voices of our clients in civic spaces, and we're building partnerships with compassion that move us from narrow to wide open, to possibility. So I've been struck by the stories that I've heard from people who have been JFCS East Bay clients at one point in their lives, and then donors or volunteers or even staff members at another point in their lives. So many who are connected to JFCS East Bay have these multiple touch points because we as an organization don't divide people into categories. We see whole people throughout the whole spectrum of their lives at every stage of life. We don't just see the vulnerable or the volunteers or the donors, but we build bridges. We are connectors. That's what I've been taught by all of you and so many more people over the last few months. We are connectors. We recognize that all people go through the cycle of life together. At some point, we'll all need support. We all have a family member that we're worried about. We all have times when we feel fragile. We have new starts at some point in our lives. We experience the beauty and love and growth and all the amazing things that the world has to offer. And we also experience suffering and challenges, disappointments, fear. Oh, and then there's that big one, right? We're all born, we all grow up, we all age, and eventually we all die. These human experiences are universal. They're observed by many faiths, traditions, cultures. They're found in every neighborhood and at every income level. I've seen during this past year that thanks to our incredibly talented staff members, we are really good at walking with our clients through these life events and experiences. That might be a member of the Jewish community who is accessing our safety net experiences and services. It might be a UC Berkeley Hillel student who's looking for mental health services. It might be an Afghan or a Ukrainian family living in the East Bay who needs legal advice and support from us so that they can bring their family to be reunited with them. Everywhere we go, people are at the heart of our work. Everything we do, people are at the heart of our work. And every day I see compassion in action, and commitment to all. Well, I'm really excited for you to see a bit more of that too this evening and meet some of the folks who we've been working with this past year and hear their stories. So let's have a look. We've put together a little something for you. Thank you.
Recently, one of our removal defense teams came to the rescue of their client whose wife had been kidnapped by Mexican cartel on her way to the United States fleeing persecution. In total desperation, our client spent every penny he had to pay the ransom, and our Immigration Legal Services team stepped up to support him, not only by providing resources on the Mexican side of the border and support to get his wife safely to the United States, but also by connecting him with our volunteer services team, which fundraised and was able to harness the power of our community to actually allow our client to pay his rent that month. And not only that, but once his wife did safely arrive in the United States, our volunteer services team put together a wardrobe of clothing in her exact size. I am incredibly proud of our Immigration Legal Services team and the work that my colleagues do, not only to serve the legal needs of our clients, but to support them in their full humanity.
JFCS makes us very welcome. Movie programs, concerts. My favorite program they offer is yoga classes. It's very important for us medically to have regular exercises. Every time you're looking for any information, you start with JFCS East Bay, and they know exactly where to go, how to find care. When pandemic broke out, that was a time when everyday life tasks became very difficult. Contacts with people who know the situation, have the information, means a lot. For us, it's our family. We feel connected and secure. In this time of insecurity and uncertainty, I feel really moved by this opportunity to say thank you very much. It's a great program, it's a great community, it's great people.
Most of our families are immigrant and low-income families. We are very thankful that your organization has given us the opportunity to work with Matthew. He has been a crucial help in our program. Working with the families, he's able to give them guidance, support, resources, and sometimes have some tough conversations. We had a family that had a child that was diagnosed with autism. And when it came to the time to transition to preschool, we suggested that he receive services through a different center because we were not going to be able to give them the developmental resources that he needed. Matthew was an important part of that conversation. He reassured the family that we will be supporting them throughout the process, and he also did this in Spanish, which is their family home language, which made a huge difference for them to feel comfortable sharing. We are very thankful for the amazing job that Matthew has done through your agency. We really appreciate the work and the support that we are receiving. It's helping us to address the social and emotional needs of our families, our children, and our staff.
We left Syria in 2013. We decided to leave because it is an obligation to serve the military. I didn't want to be involved in a war. My family and I ended up in Egypt, only to have to flee again in the next year after the violent revolution there. We landed in Ecuador and we had to pass through a very complicated US immigration process. They told us when we first applied that it's gonna be up to 2 years. I was waiting for my life to start. When we finally made it to the US in 2020, we didn't know what we should do, but luckily a JFCS case manager was waiting for us. They helped us applying for our cash assistance, food stamps, medical health insurance. They enrolled us in English classes, and they even enrolled my sister in a dental assistant program, and now she has a great job thanks to them. So I decided to become a JFCS case manager myself, because I remember how it was for me when I just arrived, and newcomers have so many needs, and they don't know how things work here yet. I am proudly giving them the same help and opportunities that was given to me. I am proud of being both a client and a team member of JFCS East Bay.
Wow. I love that video. I've now seen it about 3 or 4 times, and every time I finish watching it, I play it again just to kind of see what did I miss, the impact of that. And I think that last story is the one that really strikes me, about someone who started off as a client of JFCS East Bay and now is leaning in as a staff member. And I think the breadth and depth of the stories that you saw is no mistake, and that is not unique. That is truly the underpinnings of what JFCS East Bay is about. While rooted in that Jewish tradition of family and reaching back and helping your community, JFCS East Bay long ago recognized that particularly in Alameda and Contra Costa County, there was a need and there was a space that could be filled, and they have opened their hearts and open minds to the power of community and do that every single day. And I hope those videos brought that home to you. Incredibly moving. So again, those are just a few of the stories about how hopefully your support this evening, you can see that in action. So your generosity tonight means that not only can JFCS East Bay continue to deliver, they can actually level up. And as you heard Robin talk about the upcoming strategic plan, there's a lot of exciting work coming up and a lot of wonderful opportunities to expand and grow these vital social services here in the community. And you can see that everybody, it makes a difference, one person at a time, one community at a time. So now, you know what I'm here for. It's time for you to see if you can help JFC East Bay reach even more members of our community. So I did tell you earlier to silence your phone and maybe tuck that away, but I'm going to invite you, no surprise, to pull that back out. As you can see, it's 2022, and we're in that modern world. We're kind of coming out of COVID, taking advantage of some new technology, so you will not, as you probably figured out, or now you're learning, you will not be raising a paddle. You will actually be making your gifts via your phone. That is one of the options. So if you feel so inspired, and I hope that you do, you're going to send a text to 41444. That's who you're sending it to, with the message AOL22. You'll receive a prompt back that will let you complete your donation. So there are a few handful of steps for you to take with that. And as you can see, we have the thermometer up, so I invite you to keep your eye on that, and you'll be able to see how we're making our way towards our goal. Now, if you prefer, certainly for our live stream folks, you can look for the link, the donation link at the top of the chat or in the YouTube description to make a gift. If you prefer to make a gift by check, you can certainly do that by going to the donation page and clicking the Pledge Now, Pay Later feature, and your gift will still register on the thermometer. Finally, if you are old school, and I'm an old school person, if you prefer, you can fill out, there's a donation card in your program. You can complete that and pass the envelope to the outer edges of your aisle, and we'll collect those, and again, your pledge will show up in the thermometer. Now, if anyone's feeling, I'm already feeling challenged, Michael, what is this text to give thing? We have some wonderful staff members and volunteers here, and if you are feeling challenged, simply raise your hand and someone will come by to help you out. Now, finally, as an incentive, just taking care of all of our housekeeping, all gifts at the $500 level or more, each person will receive a signed box set of books from tonight's speaker, Adam Mansbach. So that's just kind of a nice thing to think about. So this is where I come off the stage, and it's a little bit different. Did you see? That was a very smooth transition. I'm glad all that technology worked. So this is a little bit different. We have the lights somewhat dimmed, so all I see is lovely, beautiful heads. This is mostly for our live stream audience, but I know you're there. You have your pens. I know the pens came with your programs, and you have your phones. That's perfect. Just that, there we are. You all are beautiful people. Hello, I love this. So the first level is $10,000, and I am delighted to let you know we actually had a gift already come in, and I think it'll pop up on there. It is a $10,000 gift, the very generous Heike and Eric Friedman. Now, unfortunately, yes, make some noise for that. Unfortunately, Heike and Eric both are a little under the weather and could not be here this evening, but I know that they are watching from home and are thrilled to see this wonderful crowd and are enthusiastically supporting this effort. Heike made sure that I knew she absolutely believes in JFCS East Bay and their cause and what they're about, and she especially wanted me to say that her husband, his job will match those gifts. So it was very exciting to have that $10,000 become $20,000. So if any of you have that same situation. And I see Olga. It's good to see you. I remember names. It's been 3 years, but hello, lovely Olga, working on the board. Good to see you again. So just to let you know, just a couple of things as I talk about the $10,000 level. It is a very powerful level. It can pay for an entire year of holiday meals for seniors or apartment for rent when we have some of the refugee families coming trying to figure out all of that paperwork. So I invite you all to consider that. That's just a couple of the things that the $10,000 level could do. I'm going to just keep on moving because, as I say, when you were doing it on your phone, and hopefully you will take this in the spirit delivered, everyone is in their own philanthropic prayer closet. That's what I call it. So I have no idea what you're doing when you make that gift. You are sort of going behind the curtain. It's sort of like voting or confessing or whatever you're doing. I don't know what's happening, but I know that you are digging deep. You heard Paul talk about the exciting things happening. You certainly heard Robin, who we're delighted to have on board, talk about some of the exciting things that are coming down the pipeline. Our next stop on the JFCS East Bay Art of Living train is the $5,000 level, and we actually had an incredible anonymous donor who didn't want their name on the screen but wanted that to be acknowledged and invited other people who may want to be anonymous or make a gift in honor of a parent or loved one that has passed on to go ahead and do that. So that is another way that you can do that. And again, if any of you are feeling challenged, I know as you make your way through, there are just a couple steps you have to do to make your gift. So I know those will start popping into the thermometer. Certainly put your hand up, and we have lots of wonderful people here who are more than happy to help you out. Now, just to touch on a few things at the $5,000 level, just for you to think about, I love this. It can furnish 12 twin-size beds for newly arrived refugee families. Now, it's so often, fortunately, I would imagine that most of us have homes that are comfortable and heated and have beds that we don't have to worry about. For people who are fleeing their countries and looking for asylum and a better place with safety, that type of thing makes a huge difference. So I'm going to just acknowledge, thank you, Julie Bell. I don't know if Julie is in the house here or watching from home. Julie, thank you, Julie Bell. Philip D'Souza, Joel Ben Izzy, Dana Stern, Eliza Rockefeller, Barbara Cohn, Harris Cohn, and Peretz Wolf Prusan. So we will keep going. I'm going to keep checking. I love when I just sort of turn my back and then it goes up by another $10,000. It's like magic the way that happens. Next level, $2,500, just for you to think about that. I love this again, a complete set of dishes, plates, and bowls for $50,000. families. That is amazing, just to help them get settled. And then also, this one really touched me. I have a very elderly father. It can help 1 to 2 Holocaust survivors improve their oral health by putting money towards their dental bills. And we know, as our senior citizens, those who may not have had that opportunity, that here we have a card right here who is happy to be grabbed. So one of our volunteers, I see you, and here's someone that's on the move. Thank you. Next stop on our journey, and again, I hope this is working for you. If you have any questions, if you have a shout out, this is the time. We're all here in our safe space, all doing this for JFCS East Bay. $1,000, I love this one, could provide 1 month of diapers for 20 families. Now, most of us, you may not have to think about that many diapers, but that makes a huge difference. And then, of course, our $500 level. I mentioned this earlier, and he has stepped into the room. Adam Mansbach over here, who you'll hear from. You will get a signed set of all of his wonderful books at the $500 level. So if you're thinking, maybe I can get a little something, that's a perfect level to come in at our $500 level. I'm just gonna glance back and see what's going. There we go, we're making progress. We're nearing $32,000, and I know we can ooch that up. Maybe we can get to 40. You see the 100,000, and don't worry, we are gonna keep this going even after today ends. We're gonna keep this going, send this out, and just let people know what we're working on, because we know many more people were not able to be here, maybe weren't able to watch the live stream, and we want to make sure that we engage them as well. Last 2 levels, I'll just touch on, $250 and our $100 level. And this just basic materials that we know can make a difference. Material tools, sewing machines for refugees who want to continue or start that career. We saw the young woman in the video who's now a dental assistant, which I think is absolutely amazing in finding her way here. And then for $100, it's so simple, a car seat to make sure that your little child is safe, for school uniforms for young students. So as you can see, there are gifts that make an impact for every level. And I just want to double down on what we heard from Robin and what we saw in the videos. While the name of the organization and where it is rooted is truly firmly rooted in the Jewish tradition, the fact that the work is expanding cross cultures, cross gender identities, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, this is an organization that is intentional about reaching out to ensure that everyone in the East Bay who needs a bit more of assistance can get that. So I hope that as you consider how much can I give, how can I stretch, that will be on your mind. And I just want to read off a few more as we wind down. Julie Bell, I think I saw, I don't know if it's Jamie or Jaime. I'm going to say Jamie. Is it Jaime? I was right. There we go. Jaime Alcabez, Susan Seeley, Judy and Steve Lipson, and there's our friend Anonymous, Marshall Langfield, Carrie Flacoy, I'm sorry, Carrie, Philip D'Souza, and so many more, and the numbers keep going. So as you can see, that thermometer, even if we are not specifically, we have someone right up front with their card who wants to turn that in. So I thank you all for doing that, and we're going to see how we can switch this over. There we go. I love it. Congratulations to everyone in the room. Thank you so much for everyone at home. We invite you to continue giving and participating. So far, I think I think we were nearing $38,000. So we passed $38,000. Thank you. Over $38,708. So I invite you to continue with those. Now, before we continue with the program, I want to be sure to take this time to recognize JFCS East Bay's Art of Living Committee members. 4 amazing women who are longtime JFCS East Bay supporters and who have, for the past 15 years, been instrumental in putting together JFCS East Bay's celebrations. Quite literally, the Art of Living couldn't happen without their dedication. So please join me in recognizing and thanking Ruth Phillips, Susan Seeley, Aliza Metzner, and Dina Levine Lipsit. A big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for your long-time dedication. Now, you are in for a treat. As I promised earlier, a conversation like you've never heard before in a synagogue, featuring 2 very sharp-witted social observers. Now, if you look in your program, you'll find in the back there's a page that is blank, and you can write your questions or thoughts or observations that you might have for our speakers. You have a pen, you can write those down, and if you complete that and pass it to the end of your aisle, we'll relay that to the speakers. I'll be doing that, and we'll try and get to as many of your questions as come in. Now, for those of you watching on the live stream, just enter your questions into the chat box, and again, I will make my best effort to get to those. So, I'm going to tell you folks, you know what? It's okay to laugh during this part. It truly is. Humor truly gets us through the hard times, and we've had those the last couple years, and it really is what helps us stay connected and reminds us that we are all human. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be kind of hard not to laugh when you hear from Adam Mansbach. He's a novelist, a screenwriter, cultural critic, and humorist. He's the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, now I'm going to clean it up for tonight, Go the F to Sleep, which has been translated into 40 languages. Adam has clearly tapped into at least one universal human struggle. Adam's other books include these parenting bestsellers, You Have to Effing Eat, and F, now there are 2 of you. So clearly there's a theme to his work, and I'm sure he'll get into that a bit more. He's a co-author with Dave Barry of A Field Guide to the Jewish People, and he's also the author of novels including Rage is Back, The End of the Jews, and Angry Black White Boy, the latter having been taught at over 100 schools and was adapted into a prize-winning stage play. In conversation with Adam tonight is the inimitable Manny Yakudiel, a community activist and good friend to JFCS East Bay. Manny is the founder of, what else? Manny's Restaurant, Cafe, and Civic Space in San Francisco, a one-stop shop where people can get great food, buy books, and become better informed and more involved citizens. So please join me in welcoming Adam Mansbach and Manny Yakudiel.
Hello.
Hello.
What's up, Adam Mansbach?
Oh, you know, I'm just hanging out at the synagogue on a Sunday night like I do.
Love it. Cool.
Yeah.
Coolest Jewish children's book writer this side of the Mississippi.
Some might say.
How are you feeling today? How are you?
I feel good. I'm happy to be here. I can't actually see any friendly faces, but I'm assuming that you're out there.
I'm sure they're friendly. This seems like a friendly. Yeah, give us a little friendly moment.
Yeah, there we go.
Let us know you're there.
Yeah.
And to all those tuning in at home, welcome. I hope you're curled up with a nice glass of apple juice or something similar.
We got water.
We got water.
Imagine that.
Cheers.
Cheers. It's what I like in my wine glass.
So, why are you a writer?
Well, I lack any other marketable skills.
I don't believe that.
I come from a family of writers.
Tell me.
My grandmother was a poet. I was very close to her. My grandmother was a poet who had a syndicated poetry column in a number of newspapers, which in 2022 is a sentence that makes no sense on any level, right?
Okay.
First of all, there were these things called newspapers. Her poetry column was sort of skewering politicians and commenting on current events. It was called the Muse of the Week in Review.
Amazing.
And I would watch her compose these poems. She'd be sitting at her keyboard typing, smoking a cool cigarette. And, you know, this was my earliest exposure to the world of words and the idea that words could be powerful and political and acerbic and cutting. One of the more notable pieces she wrote in that column was called The Love Song of R. Milhouse Nixon. So she would take, you know, a poem like T.S. Eliot's Proof Rock in this case and flip it to be about current events. Do I dare them to impeach? That kind of thing.
She sounds like a really cool grandma.
She was very hip, yeah. So I grew up around her. My father was a newspaper editor, worked for 40 years in the newsroom of the Boston Globe, recently retired, kind of the institutional memory of the Boston Globe newsroom after all that time. My mother was a reporter when she and my father met at the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, another fine newspaper. Yeah, okay,
We have some
hey.
unexpected Worcester Telegram and Gazette super fans over here.
Are you guys
are you
subscribers? Yeah.
You're from
Hey,
Worcester.
me too.
Did you plant those people?
I don't go anywhere without a couple of Worcester
Yes.
natives. Yeah.
Very smart.
Wow,
This is
amazing,
why you're
yeah.
such a successful author.
Because I'm from Worcester, yeah.
Because you plant Worcesterites in the audience.
Yeah. You guys are the only people in the building who know how to spell Worcester, I bet. Yeah. So yeah, I had a lot of writers in my family, so I had a lot of support for the idea of being a writer. You know, by the time I was 5, I was making people take dictation for me. You know, my grandparents would have a lot of cocktail parties. A lot of my grandmother's friends were writers. A lot of them were very successful writers in retrospect. I did not know this as a 5-year-old, but I would be like pulling on people's pant legs, making them take a pad and a pen and write down my stories, only to learn later that, you know, they had like won Pulitzer Prizes and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I guess it wasn't a surprise to anyone when you embarked on a career of writing and editing. Is it safe to say that?
It is safe to say that, yeah.
Was it a surprise to you?
Not really. I mean, I really was pretty serious about it from a young age. Like by the time I was 11 or 12, I was pretty serious about writing. I was writing poetry and rap lyrics primarily at the time. And then I sort of branched out into fiction and journalism.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Because I know that you have deep roots in the world of hip hop. And I also know that Jews, I don't often see Jews with I don't.
Huh.
So, am I wrong? Are you unique?
No.
Do you see what I'm trying to ask you?
Absolutely.
Can you help me?
Yes. Yes, I can.
Demystify this connection, because I don't make that connection often.
Yeah. Well,
Pulitzer Prizes, yes.
Sure, yeah. Every non-embarrassing white person involved in hip-hop is Jewish.
Okay, I need...
And this cuts across the various hip-hop disciplines and art forms, whether it's rapping, DJing, graffiti writers, journalists. Yeah, I mean, I could give you a litany of names.
What would you say are like the top 3 Jews in hip-hop that you wouldn't, that have contributed a lot to the art form?
Certainly the Beastie Boys come to mind.
Right, I do know them.
That's an obvious one.
Yes, that registers.
Man, I hated the Beastie Boys when they first came out.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Did you feel like, why?
Because, you know, now they're cool. Now they're like, you associate them with like Tibetan freedom concerts. Back then, they were like spraying beer at people on stage, and they had like a giant blow-up phallus that they brought up on stage with them, and they were doing songs like...
That sounds good to me.
I'm sure. You know, Party for Your Right to Fight was their big song,
I like that
and they
song.
were like, okay.
Okay, all right. Well, clearly we okay.
They were like kind of, okay, I'll put it like this. What I didn't realize is that they were New Yorkers who had deep roots in hip-hop and in punk, knew everybody in the scene, and were insiders to the point where they could tweak hip-hop and make fun of it a little bit from the perspective of being deeply rooted in it. From the outside, they just looked like they were clowning the culture.
Yeah.
You know, they looked like frat boys to me. It turns out they weren't.
Right. So who's 2 and 3?
One of the biggest...
I want the audience to go home tonight with a little bit of cocktail party trivia. You know, so they not only will they donate to JFCS East Bay, but they'll also, you know, we'll give them some useful factoids.
Absolutely. Graffiti writers like Zephyr and Billy 167 and Keo are Jewish. We can get into why graffiti is part of hip hop and why it matters and why it's interesting and why it's politically fresh, if we want to. Producers like Rick Rubin, Alchemist, have played a big part in the history of hip hop.
Okay, did you hear that? Alchemist, Rick Rubin, Beastie Boys, and graffiti artists.
Now you got your cocktail party on Smash. There you go.
So what was your first hip hop album that you can recall?
The first hip hop album I remember buying was Kings of Rock by Run DMC, 1985. Okay.
Was it a cassette?
Oh yeah, it was certainly a cassette.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we got there, because this intersection to me is something that I didn't really think happened. But you have, not only are you a best-selling author, but you also started your career in many ways editing a hip-hop magazine. Is that true?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I mean,
where was the magazine? What did you all write about?
The magazine was called Elementary. We actually called it a journal. We were
how serious?
We were so serious, but we wanted to do longer form pieces. This was like 1995, 96. I was a college student. I had moved from Boston to New York, and I wasn't seeing the level of dialogue that I experienced in my life reflected in the pages of hip hop magazines that existed. For me, at that time, and earlier, much earlier, hip-hop was the site of the most interesting interrogations of race, of class, of police brutality, of Eurocentricity in education. Hip-hop was the battleground for any conversation about gender, race, class, urbanity. But the magazines, the existing forums weren't really doing it justice. I felt like the depth of those conversations needed to be reflected in print, so I started a journal. And what we tried to do was sort of put interesting thinkers inside of hip-hop in conversation with interested and sympathetic and sometimes not so sympathetic voices outside of hip-hop.
And what was it like creating that investigation as a white passing Jewish man?
Well, here's the thing. When I started being involved in hip-hop at the age of 12 and 13 and 14.
And what does involved mean to you?
Well, at the time, hip-hop was very much not in the mainstream. It was not on the radio. It was not on television. You had to seek it out in physical space and put yourself in places where it existed, and that was predominantly black spaces. So hip-hop was the site in American life that dislocated whiteness from its sort of presumed position of centrality, of normality. To be a white person in hip-hop in the late 80s and the early 90s meant taking a serious critical look at whiteness.
But also it meant physically bringing yourself to the physical spaces where hip-hop was happening. And so you were doing that at 12 and 13.
I was.
Okay.
Yeah, I lived on the train line, so I could get around Boston pretty easily. And this was also when hip-hop was at its kind of peak of overtly political lyricism. This is the era of groups like Public Enemy and Boogie Down Productions and the Jungle Brothers, who we talked about backstage, who are making songs that are interrogations of things like what is taught in history classrooms and why the police keep beating up black people for no reason or killing them, which was happening back then too. Mainstream America wasn't privy to it, but through the lens of hip-hop, through these records, I was very aware of it. So my take on race, my take on whiteness, on privilege, all these things were honed at that young age by hip-hop in a very serious way. Like, I was really thinking hard about it.
I want to let you continue your answer about what it was like writing the magazine, but I have to ask at this juncture, what was it about 12 or 13-year-old Adam that catalyzed you wanting to do this and be in these spaces? I mean, when I was 12 and 13, I was like a hairy, poorly dressed yeshiva bucher, like reading the Dalai Lama in my like childhood bedroom and wondering if I was ever going to come out of the closet. I was not going on the train line to cool hip-hop venues and interrogating race and class. So what was it about you that got you to do that?
But you were reading the Dalai Lama. My Dalai Lama
I mean, I was also cool in my own way, but this was not nearly as cool as you seem to have been.
My Dalai Lama was basically Public Enemy, you know, is the easiest way to say it. I think, you know, I grew up in a city and a state which prides itself on its liberalness, its progressivism, but Boston is a wildly segregated city.
Right.
So I saw a lot of hypocrisy. I saw a lot of lip service to certain ideals. I saw a lot of people who wrote monthly checks to the NAACP or the Southern Poverty Law Center, but were also fundamentally uncomfortable in mixed race settings or had no black friends. I saw the resistance that I faced from other white kids, white passing Jewish kids, let's say, when I started gravitating toward hip hop. You know, by 7th grade, they were calling me man's black, you know.
Man's black?
Yeah. Now,
were these your white friends or your black friends?
These were my white enemies.
Your white enemies.
This was a way to make fun of me, right? Because to a certain extent, when somebody who is perceived to be white gravitates away from what is perceived to be the center in terms of where privilege, cultural capital, any of these things is located, and toward the margins, it throws everybody into flux because they no longer are sure where the center is located. So, you know, the kind of trope in the 90s when I was in high school, this is a word I don't use in real life, but the wigger trope, right? The white kid who wants to be black. It was in movies, it was on TV, it was everywhere. It was ubiquitous. It was Seth Green, it was Malibu's Most Wanted, it was Vanilla Ice, right? And the reason that that was pushed so hard was to make it seem ridiculous that a white kid could be interested in hip hop, could be developing a critical sensibility about race and whiteness through hip hop. We've got to do something to disempower that, so let's make it look absurd.
And was that, would you say that that experience of having white enemies, was that the influence for and the inspiration for Angry Black White Kid?
Angry Black White Boy.
White Boy,
yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, that's a novel that I wrote certainly to explore the limits of what white racial allyship might look like in the age of hip hop. It's a novel.
Sounds awfully familiar.
Yeah. It's very similar to my story until it isn't, because it ultimately is a absurdist, surreal satire about a white kid who starts robbing white passengers in the taxi cab he drives in New York City, and giving them little diatribes about the evils and the invisibility of whiteness, and word goes out that some kind of radical black cab driver is robbing white people, and all of a sudden white people don't want to take cabs anymore, so black people can finally get cabs.
Can I ask you a vulnerable yet bold question?
That's what I'm here for.
Does it ever make you feel, are you ever worried about trying to point out issues with race and class and racism, and also understand that the Jews have our own stereotype at being at some kind of top of the power pyramid, and feel like we shouldn't be fighting, it's awkward for me to be in this because I'm a Jew and Jews have this perception of power, and how do you break through that, or have you, in the circles that you've been in?
The older I get, the more invested I am in approaching all of this through a Jewish lens. And a lot of my more recent work does take up these questions from a Jewish perspective, or Jewish perspectives. I mean, I think one of the narratives of Jewish life in America in the last half century is the way that the vaunted Black Jewish Civil Rights Alliance that we're all so proud of has dissolved, and how, particularly in the 80s, there was a changing of bedfellows. There was seemingly a decision on the part of a lot of Jewish folks to become white or whiter. And there was a kind of symbolic separating and a symbolic slaying of figures who represented black leadership, right? There was, the Jesse Jackson, Hymietown 1983 incident, right? Which, people forget that Jesse was like on his way to winning the New York primary and perhaps being the Democratic nominee, and was running an incredible campaign, a campaign that was an exemplar in many ways of inclusion. And he says Hymietown on a hot mic, and suddenly he's a pariah, and remains a pariah, right? Is never welcomed back, is never forgiven, is never, it's as if he never did anything else in his life. It's as if he never stood on a hotel balcony in his life. So there's the Jesse Jackson incident. There's Al Sharpton and the Crown Heights riots and the Tawana Brawley situation. There's Farrakhan. Like, there are all these, and this is not to say that none of those incidents matter, or that there was no whispers of anti-Semitism to them. But it is to say that in a lot of those cases, those leaders were strung up and made to symbolize some widespread black anti-Semitism that could then be used for cover as a retreat from this alliance, in ways that to me are really tragic and problematic. And compare that to the way that other figures who say anti-Semitic things but don't happen to be black are quickly welcomed back into the fold. Like, Mel Gibson says some wild, crazy, disgusting shit.
But we all remember that.
And like 3 days later, the rabbis and the ADL are like, hey, come over for a nosh, let's discuss this. Jesse Jackson never gets that phone call.
Well, I think what you might be hinting at is also a current of racism within our own people that we have to investigate, and I'm sure that you've done some of that yourself and probably have done it in your writings. I do have to say before we get to a few of your writings, we have limited time. Hearing you speak, it does make me especially proud of JFCS East Bay because JFCS East Bay, of course, is one of the leading organizations doing the resettlement of Afghan refugees and soon Ukrainian refugees, and it makes me very proud that a Jewish organization is such a leader in this particular field, especially given that some of these folks that are being, resettled, they're not Jewish, they may not have any connection to Judaism, but it is part of our people's history to obviously repair the world. And so it makes me sad that this alliance has, not this alliance, but we've got some kind of...
Our alliance is strong.
Yeah, our alliance is strong, but this alliance within the civil rights world has frayed. Go the F to Sleep.
Yeah.
How many of you have either read or heard of this book? Yeah? A lot of folks?
Worcester has heard of it, for
Worcester's
sure.
heard of it.
Worcester knows all about that.
I'm sure you've answered this a million times, but how did you get the idea to write a children's book from the perspective, an adult children's book, and Go the F to Sleep and calling it that?
Yeah, well, my daughter Vivian, who turned 14 a couple of days ago, was 2.5 at the time, and sleeping was not high on her list of priorities. It would take me sometimes 2 hours or more to get her to fall asleep. And when you're a young parent or a parent of a young child, like that is all the free time you have in the day, is those hours after the kid goes to sleep. So when they won't, it's infuriating. And really, and also sleeping is like a basic human need. So to not be able to convince a kid to sleep is just, you're like, I can't convince you to do this thing that if you don't do it, you'll go insane and die. Like, and it's like, you would do anything to get out of that room at a certain point. Like if Don Corleone walked into the room and was like, I'll put the child to bed, but you may have to do a service for me one day and that day may never come. You're like, whatever, Don Corleone, like, we'll work out the details later, just take this baby.
You really want that baby to go to sleep.
Yeah. So, you read these insufferable books to these children when you're trying to put them to sleep, and they're all the same. They all have these like cutesy rhymes and these, insufferable animals who so, I mean, when I thought of Go the Fuck to Sleep, I thought of it as a parody of these books, basically, that would take the same kind of lullaby-esque style and the same cutesy illustrations and the same like ABC rhyme scheme.
Right.
And intersperse that with a parent's real internal monologue. So I sat down and wrote it one day.
Were you writing it with the adults in mind? Like, if I were here, I would want to read this book?
Yeah, I thought that it was going to be for me and like a couple of other shitty parents.
I see. Okay.
Welcome. And so I wrote it. I got a couple of illustrations done by my friend Ricardo Cortez, who was also the art director for my hip hop magazine 20 years.
Wow. All right.
And I sent it only to one publisher. I sent it to my friend Johnny Temple, who was the publisher of Akashic Books, an independent house in Brooklyn. Their motto is reverse gentrification of the literary world. So they're like a real commercial powerhouse, right? And he was like, this is hilarious. I don't think I can publish it. And I was like, no, of course not. Like, I just thought you'd think it was funny. At the time, there was no such thing as an obscene fake children's book. Like, that genre didn't exist yet.
You created it. You're a trailblazer.
I'm a trailblazer. So, like, for months, Johnny and I would sort of check in. Like, he read it to his wife, and his wife thought it was funny, and he took it to some event, and like he gave it to the novelist Jonathan Lethem, brother of the aforementioned Keo, the graffiti writer, Jewish graffiti writer.
Do you guys remember that? That was the first. We're gonna have a pop quiz later.
That's right.
Top 3.
And Lethem was like, "This is hilarious," and so gradually we sort of edged toward publishing it. And still, I didn't think anything was gonna happen. I was just tickled that I was even getting to publish a book called Go the Fuck to Sleep. And then I gave a reading about 6 months before the book was published. I had just gotten the final PDF of the book, and I gave a reading of the book at a museum in Philadelphia where I was living at the time. I wasn't living at the museum, I had a house. But I read it for like 200 people, and it was well received, and I was like, okay, cool, like maybe this will find an audience. And I went home, and the Amazon page for the book had just gone up for pre-sales. And by the next morning when I woke up, the book was ranked 125th of all books on Amazon.
Wow.
Which, you know, as a literary novelist, I didn't even know the numbers went lower than like 5 digits, you know? And by the end of the week, the book was #1 on Amazon.
Wow.
Now, not to get overly technical, but the book did not exist, right? Like, hadn't been published, was not even printed yet.
I want to ask you how you got to that, but I also want to remind the audience, if you have questions, now is the time, or it has been, but please make sure you write them in because we only have a minute or two left up here before we get to the audience questions. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll speed it up then.
Yeah, you gotta. I have one more question for you after this.
So the book just sat there at #1, and we were like, oh my God, this is crazy. Then the thing that we feared happened, which was that a PDF of the book that we had put together for booksellers because we thought it might be helpful in getting them to even stock, much less support a book called Go the Fuck to Sleep. The PDF leaked and started ricocheting all over the internet and landed in hundreds of thousands of people's inboxes.
By accident?
By accident.
Really by accident?
Oh yeah. We were
That was not a plant like the Worcester people?
No, no. We were like, oh my God, no one's gonna buy the book now. But it turns out that it's bad form to show up at a baby shower with a low resolution, printed out, stapled together PDF. So it was okay. So we made it, you know, meanwhile we're rushing the book out in time for Father's Day in June. We make it to Father's Day, the book gets published. Samuel Jackson reads the audiobook, probably his best work since Pulp Fiction. And, you know, but like crazy things just kind of continued to happen. There was a censorship battle in New Zealand over the book.
Wow.
There was a woman in Australia who posted the whole book as a Facebook album like 2 days after that PDF leaked, and all the traffic was going to her page. And like I wrote her this really nice email. I was like, look, I'm glad that you're enthusiastic, but like we'd like to sell a couple of these books when we do finally publish it. So could you please take it down? And she was like, sure. But in the last 24 hours, 700 people have asked me where they can buy the book, and I'm sending them all to Amazon. I'm like, look, please ignore my previous email.
Yeah.
You know.
Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through the whole journey, but I imagine it's been pretty incredible to see this bedtime idea become an international bestseller and translated into 42 languages. And I just want to say, I'm not your Jewish mother, but I am proud of you. And I think we all are proud of Adam for doing that.
That's so sweet.
One final question. I do want to remind folks, and I think it's still active, to text AOL 22 to 41444. Is it still active? Yes? That's AOL 22 41444. And only places like JFCS East Bay can bring such Shana Punhams to the stage to donate. My last question for you is, can you give this audience, both here and at home, a little sneak peek at what you're doing next that, you know, isn't public yet and isn't out there, just for us, because we've come here to celebrate this amazing organization. I think we deserve to give them an inside scoop on what your next project is.
Sure. Cone of silence.
Just mishpacha, okay?
Two things that I'll mention that I'm excited to be working on right now. No, 3. Why not?
This was supposed to be a short last question.
One of them is a movie I wrote, which is forthcoming from New Line. It stars Andy Samberg, who's Jewish, it turns out. And also Craig Robinson and Common. It's called Super High, and it's about a strain of marijuana that gives you superpowers. But you get different superpowers every time, and like a lot of them are not very good. And also it can be very like dangerous to figure out what they are. And also the higher you get, the more powerful you are, but also like the higher you are, you know?
I have no idea what that's like.
Yeah, we'll talk later. So that's project number 1. I'm also, for the first time in a long time, writing a novel right now, which is exciting for me. It's been a minute. It's called The Golem of Brooklyn.
Ooh.
It's about a guy who, just because he's like, again, this is maybe a theme of my book. It's about this like high school art teacher who's been stealing clay from his school for like a couple of years for no real reason, and one day is really stoned and decides to make a golem. Yeah.
That's not going to end well. And what's the third thing?
The third thing is a screenplay called Bar Mitzvah Kings, which takes place in the high-stakes world of bar mitzvah DJs in 1993. Yeah.
Wow. Such amazing projects. Yeah. Let's give a round of applause to Adam Mansbach. We have time for a couple audience questions, I think. We could sit here and talk all night, but there's a lot more to do, and we've got a full program. So what questions do we have?
There is no more program after this, so
amazing.
but we
right,
got to
lock
keep
the
it.
door.
Right, no. So I didn't realize I could say the F word in Temple Isaiah. I thought I would
I have a special dispensation.
You have a special dispensation.
We can all say the F word. Should we all say it together?
No, oh my God, Adam, we're on the bima.
Okay, so here's
why I don't get invited anywhere.
No, you'll be invited back. Here's our first question. Adam, at the heart of your writing around race and identity is the quality of empathy. Oh,
hello.
She's bold. Okay, Olga.
I love that. Vulnerable yet bold. Wow.
At the heart of your writing around race and identity is the quality of empathy. We live at a time of such, air quotes here, othering. How do we repair that?
That's a beautiful question. I want to say that storytelling has to lie at the heart of it. That's why I do what I do. And I think, why Manny does what he does too, is like we're storytellers and we want to bring people into dialogue, and whether it's fiction, nonfiction, journalism, we are human because we tell stories. We are Jews because we read books, certain books. So like storytelling, I think, is at the heart of empathy. It's impossible on some level to write good fiction without being empathetic, because you've got to figure out a way to occupy the bodies, the minds, the hearts, the souls of your characters and give them all an equal measure of humanity. And to do that, you've got to move outside of your own experience. You've got to be empathetic. You've got to think as another might. You've got to allow ideas and feelings to bang up against each other as characters do in ways that can be painful but also beautiful. So I mean, I really do think that storytelling and story creation are at the heart of empathy, and that that is one way back.
Thank you. Yeah. So here's a question for both Manny and Adam. Manny, I've heard you on the podcast, This is Dating. And Adam, you've been a part of your friend and Art of Living speaker, W. Kamau Bell's Instagram piece on vasectomies. I'm just reading them, folks. What would you say digital media, as in podcasts, social media posts, et cetera, offer in speaking about important topics like feminist birth control, queer dating? Thank you.
I want to know what you were you talking about vasectomies?
Okay, so my good friend, W. Kamau Bell, on his show on CNN, he did an episode on his own vasectomy and why it was like a political and feminist decision on his part, to get one. And he convened some of his friends to discuss his vasectomy, and I was one of the people he called. And I had been a little bit on the fence about getting a vasectomy. I have 3 children. 3 daughters, like a farmer in a joke. So I should have, it should have been on my mind, even if it wasn't. And out of that conversation, I ended up deciding to go ahead and get one. And Kamau gave me like his doctor's, card and everything. And then he and I were doing City Arts and Lectures a few weeks later. And we were on stage like joking around about our vasectomy doctor. And suddenly there was like this commotion in the crowd. And some guy in the back was standing up and everybody was like making a lot of noise. And it turned out it was our vasectomy doctor.
What?
And he had come to our event and was like passing out cards. I have not answered the question at all.
It was about, do you remember the question?
It was something about digital media.
And about telling these kinds of stories through
Correct.
digital media and why it's important and how it affects the storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear what you have to say. I'll be real quick.
Yeah, I mean, so the This Is Dating podcast came kind of out of nowhere, and after that, the Boston Globe, your father's publication, asked me to come and do, I was the season finale for their podcast, which was called Love Letters. And it was about the first person I ever fell in love with, who I fell in love with 11 years ago, and we've stayed in touch as a good friend of mine. And it was about unexpected connections. And I do think I'm still living in a time where queer love, especially as a religious Jew, but queer love stories, queerness, it's still not new, but it's happening in the public eye, and you never know who might be listening to that, and it might be a moment for them. It might be the first queer love story they've ever heard. It might be a young kid in their living room. It might be, a parent that just had their son or daughter come out to them, and they're trying to understand what that means. I remember growing up in Los Angeles, and same-sex marriage wasn't legal, and there was like Ellen on television, and there weren't a lot of places. I remember going to the public library on Robertson to look up the word gay in the encyclopedia, right? So even in my lifetime, things have shifted so much, and so when people ask me to tell a story about falling in love with another man, it's not lost on me that that story can still really have an effect on someone who might be listening in a really positive way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Manny.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right, and I think that increasingly I don't make a distinction between digital media and traditional media. I think that, again, like whatever the forum is, whatever the avenue or the vector is, the story is what's important. So if people are listening to podcasts, I'll go on a podcast. I'll start a podcast, You got to meet people where they are, and increasingly, that's where people are,
Great. Just a couple more. This is again for Adam or Manny. Why do you think humor plays such an important part in Jewish identity? And then part two, who modeled Jewish humor for you growing up?
Well, I'd like to start by answering this question with a question, which is, has anybody in this room even ever heard of Christian humor? It's not even a term.
That's a good question.
It's not even a term.
That's a good question.
It's not even a thing that exists.
And then there's that.
I will answer the question, unlike you, and say that I would say Jewish humor growing up would be the nanny, probably. Like when I think of, I don't even know if she's Jewish. Is she Jewish?
Fran Drescher?
Oh, okay. But in the show, I don't think she was Jewish. But to me, like, that was Jewish humor.
I think it's one of those cases where they de-Jewified her, but everybody knew, but the network...
Oh, the mother with the doggy bag and the whole...
There's a lot of characters on TV who you assume are Jewish, you identify them as Jewish, but the network doesn't claim them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
and why do you think humor is so important to us? I mean, I think the obvious answer is because there's so much pain in our story.
Right.
And so one way to deal with pain is to laugh about it, and to, if you're not laughing, you're crying. Mm-hmm. So there's probably a bit of that. Do you think that's the main reason why humor is so important to us, or?
I think that's certainly up there. It is a way to alchemize some joy out of pain. It is a way to process and to figure out how to go on. But I think there are other elements too. I mean, there are. When I wrote the Field Guide to the Jewish People with Dave Barry and Alan Zweibel, this was something we thought about a lot. Like, how do you define Jewish humor? Is every joke told by a Jewish person a Jewish joke? Can it be a Jewish joke if it's told by a non-Jewish person?
Are there certain jokes that only a Jew can tell about Jews?
Exactly.
Right. I think the other part of it is, Judaism is a religion, but it's also a family, right? Like the two of us are related in some way, and we're all related in this room in some way. And so there's a certain ease when you're with family, and you can say certain things and make certain jokes that might be hard when you're around people that aren't part of your family. Yeah. And you feel that too when you're in a room full of Jews. There's a certain amount of maybe don't know you, but I feel a kinship to you.
There's a sensibility. And a lot of these jokes are in line with and help to define that sensibility. Like, Gilbert Gottfried died recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
An incredibly funny guy who opened for me at the Friars Club once when I was doing a book launch there, because my co-author, Alan Zweibel, is an old friend of his. And what Gilbert did was stand up behind the podium, did not say a single word by way of introduction, just proceeded for the next 15 minutes to tell one Jewish joke after the next, with no interstitials, no explanations. And I don't mean that he did comedy. I mean that he told jokes. Mm-hmm. like the jokes your uncle tells you. Jokes that everybody in the building had already heard. Repeatedly. And he killed. It was incredible. It was one of the most bravura-like performances I've ever seen in my life. And it was like playing the greatest hits, you know? And everybody in there, a largely Jewish crowd, there was a familiarity. You know, it's like going to a concert. It's like going to a Beyonce show, and you know she's going to play her songs. You're going to sing along.
Right.
And it's going to be like cathartic and collective in a really beautiful way. And I don't know. I think there are certain jokes that, for me, I could define the sensibility that I consider the Jewish sensibility by telling the joke better than in any other way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I know we have to wrap. I just want to say, before we do, thank you so much for your contribution to humor and to media and to writing. I really appreciate all that you've done, and thank you, I'm sure, on behalf of the millions of parents that have read your book. Hopefully it's been able to help them put their kids to sleep. And then I also just want to thank all of you. I mean, this organization, I got familiarized with it because I threw a fundraiser for Afghan refugee resettlement when we pulled out of the war. And it is an amazing, amazing organization that does such incredible work. And we, for the Jews in the audience, should be very proud that this organization is leading on this critical humanitarian front. So we should all be proud of what they do. I want to see us hit that goal. And thank you very much.
So I know you all join me in thanking Manny and Adam for their time and their humor and sharing, so thank you both. Just before I invite Robin to come back up with some closing remarks, we had one last question, which we won't get into, but Adam, I'm sure whoever asked it can capture you and pin you later. They asked, do you know how to say fuck in 42 languages? So whoever asked that question, you can speak to Adam, but right now, please join me in welcoming back CEO of JFCS East Bay, Robin Mencher. Robin.
Thanks so much, Michael, and wow. Thanks so much, Adam and Manny, for your insights and for the humor, for really touching on the power of storytelling and who our storytellers are. And what we represent when we tell stories and how stories can bring people together. I'm really excited this evening to be standing up here with a note that as of now, we've raised almost $55,000 just this evening alone. So thanks to everyone gathered here tonight and everyone at home for your incredible generosity, for remembering that the stories that we tell and the human lives that we touch are right here in our own communities and our own neighborhoods, and we're making that change happen and doing that repair work just as we work on every day, and we do it in partnership with all of you. So thank you so much. I also want to just take a few moments before we close up. Although this evening was different than the fan favorite past Art of Living events, I do hope that you've had a few moments to be inspired, to be delighted, to laugh together, and to know that we'll keep coming back together and finding new ways of connecting with one another and connecting with the broader community. I hope that you feel that this is a time of renewal for us as we march into spring together and take those risks to really engage deeply with community. And we do that with the gratitude of all of our volunteers, all of our donors, everyone who planned this evening, our incredible planning committee, and of course, our board of directors and our staff members who made tonight possible. So let's all give them another round, please. We at JFCS East Bay will be back at work early tomorrow morning preparing for the brand new announcement from the Biden administration at the end of last week that we're going to start resettling and reuniting Ukrainians with their families here in the East Bay and other places around the country. And so we'll keep you posted about all of that. But we know that the energy that we have together tonight will bring the values that we all share to meet this moment of complexity and the challenges, and that will bring with it also the beauty and the possibilities that we spoke of this evening. So I invite each of you to become part of this collective effort by JFCS East Bay and our partner organizations. You can yourself also learn about more opportunities for volunteering and other ways to engage by checking out our website. And although we're coming to a close this evening, I want to remind you all that our conversation, our connection, of what we've started talking about tonight is just getting started. So please feel free to reach out. We want to hear your feedback, your ideas, and to continue connecting. So give me a call or send me a note, and let's start new conversations and continue ones that we've already started. After spending this evening together, however you joined us from home or right here in this room, I'm more confident than ever that we do have what it takes to keep building our community, a community where everyone can flourish with dignity. Thanks to all for joining us at this year's Art of Living, and please note that as you leave, we'll be joined again by our incredible musicians from the Matthew Stein Duo. Go ahead and say hello to old friends and new, and pick up your dessert as you head back to your cars. Again, thanks to all for your generosity, and your kind spirit that brought us all together here in common service. And have a great night.